Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. Today Cobat posted an Alliance War Season 19 update. Alliance War is being updated overall, so as always make sure you check the description for timestamps if you want to skip the read aloud, you want my first impression on the nodes, etc, etc. A link to the forum if you'd rather read it rather than listen to me. But that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So Summoners, after his defeat at the hands of the Summoner and Karina, the Grandmaster has been an elder without a calling. Despite the problems and conflicts that the Grandmaster and the Collector have caused, they are still Karina's family, and she loves them very much. Instead of banishing them off to a far-off land, she's worked with her council to create a plan to keep the two of them busy and out of trouble. The Universal Gamesman. Karina knows that a game with changing rule sets and unpredictable pieces is the perfect distraction to keep Gast out of trouble. Under her supervision, the Grandmaster will transform Alliance Wars into his tournament, where he seeks the strongest alliances every season to crown as his victors. Recreating the battlefield. The Grandmaster has never been shy about wanting to mold the contest to his vision and making sure his presence is noted. He'll be starting with the maps on which you fight. So first, we're going to take a look at the new nodes, path identities, layouts of the Grandmaster's new maps. All map changes will take effect on June 24th. New maps. First, we've got two brand new maps, one for alliances playing on easy and normal, and one for alliances playing on intermediate, hard, challenger, and expert. If you'd like to take a closer look, we've reattached the high resolution versions of these maps to this post. These new, more simplified maps eliminate portals and bring the entire battle group back together at key points throughout the map. Here's easy and normal. Here's intermediate, hard, challenger, and expert. I'll talk about those later. New local nodes. Grandmasters crafted the following nodes for alliances on the intermediate, hard, challenger, or expert maps. We'll talk about those nodes in a bit. Path identities. If you like to plan ahead, the Grandmaster is happy to provide you with a list of all buffs on all nodes across the maps. There are lots to look at, so we've attached the list of nodes in the next post. Matchmaking update. The Grandmaster wants to ensure that his tournament stays as competitive as possible. To do so, he is updating the parameters of matchmaking. Matchmaking will now emphasize your alliance's war rating above all else. This will ensure that alliances vying for the crown will be competing against other top alliances. This will also be a big adjustment for a lot of alliances. Currently, many alliances are either having an inflated war rating or deflated war rating due to the current system. To expedite the process of alliances finding their true war rating, we will be reducing every alliance's war rating by 50%. This will affect every alliance in-game and will accelerate the rate at which alliances find their true position faster because of the concentrated war ratings of all alliances. The change to matchmaking and the war rating reduction will occur on July 8th. What's next? There's still so much to reveal about Season 19 and beyond. Next week we'll cover reward changes, defense tactics, and attack tactics, Alliance War solo events. Remember, Alliance War Season 19 starts on July 7th and there will be no war starting on July 5th. Stay tuned for more information on everything else about Season 19, and then they post the path identities. So, for those of you who skipped the read aloud, I'll stick a timestamp here. I'll go over my first impressions for everything except the nodes, because I want to end on the nodes as I do my first impressions and my counter ideas there. So first off, I'm never excited to see an Alliance War Season update. Like, until I see an overhaul or a complete rework, I'm a little less interested. I think the lore is pretty neat. I think that's solid. I like that they're changing the map on June 24th and then having season start a couple weeks later. That's a nice have, but that's pretty standard. My comment on these maps is they're not really different. Essentially what they've done is they've taken away the teleportals, so it looks a lot nicer. It's pretty basic, but it does look to be the same amount of energy to me, so I don't see a change there. It might be one less, but it looks the same to me, but the general layout is exactly the same. Easy and normal players will still have 6 paths. You'll still have the shared minis. This will segue your way into Boss Island. Essentially what they've done is they've taken the double stacked minis at the end of Section 2, and they've put one at the beginning of your section and one at the end, and they've done this for Hard, Challenger, Intermediate, and Expert as well. So it looks different like in the back half. Like the front half looks exactly the same, but it looks different in the back half. But again, the notice here is that they've taken, it used to be 2 minis at the end of Section 2, but now it's 1 in the front and 1 in the back. There's still 2 shared minis, so literally there's not really any change, except for taking away the teleporters, which I think was awesome. We really didn't need teleporters. It just led to the potential for a misclick, and eliminating that is a positive quality of life improvement overall. I will say that there is a major change here. I don't see linked nodes, like cross-link nodes, so that may be a really huge positive if those are actually gone based on this map, because I didn't really like the cross-link nodes. But also, note that the hidden nodes are now on mini-bosses instead, which looks really stupid. Like the mini-bosses in Section 1 and the mini-bosses, the second set of mini-bosses in Section 2 all have hidden nodes. And like, that's just so annoying. I definitely feel like that's incredibly unnecessary, but if you're talking about having hidden nodes, at least it's spread out across the map. I personally really advocate towards removing hidden nodes in general. There's already enough complexities to war as is. The last thing we need is the additional complexity of hidden nodes. But, you know, that's something to keep an eye on there. So now it's probably going to be important to have a couple people, maybe at least 3 in each battle group, be able to scout out those minis so you're not completely SOL. And then we have the new nodes. Path identities, I think, is neat, but I think that's just what they're referring to. The paths already kind of had like a relative path identity. I feel like now they're just putting a label on something that kind of already existed. But you know, it is what it is. I do think that's a good thing to have. That's definitely a positive route. As far as the matchmaking updates, this is a soft reset. Like, this is called soft reset. A soft ladder reset. It's a pretty common thing that's done in any kind of competitive formatting game, and it's overall, I think, good for the game. It's always rough at the beginning, no matter what. It can't be avoided. You're always going to have a rough time at the beginning, but I do think this is positive overall for the game. I really like this emphasis of Alliance War rating above all else, because it didn't make sense that you had like alliances with like super low overall alliance rating, but having like a high war rating, just kind of coasting along because they kept getting easy matchups. So I think that's a really good change as well. I don't think that's enough to fix alliance matchmaking, but I definitely think it will help. And then as far as what's next, reward changes, you know, this makes a huge impact on the way I think people overall reevaluate new nodes and new maps and stuff. So I'm like super disappointed that this is not in this post. I know it's a lot to cover. I know maybe they're still working on it. It just feels like a loss, because no lie, the rewards of Alliance War completely shift people's mentality on whether or not it's worth it, whether or not it's worth effort. So to not include it in your update is a huge miss. I know that's a rough criticism, and I understand we're going to get in a week, and that's totally fine, and I'll talk about it a week from now. But not seeing it here, I think, is just a complete drop ball. Just kind of a miss. Defense tactics and attack tactics, I think, is going to be really important. I'm really curious how they'll handle attack tactics. I hope they nerf the heck out of some of these defense tactics. And then Alliance War solo events, I don't know. I think that's neat. It has a lot of potential, but until I see it, I won't really have any commentary. So those are my first impressions. I know a little bit of harsh criticism there, but you know, those are my thoughts at least. Like, I would have a much more positive spin on this if I knew what the rewards were. As far as nodes, before I talk about the new nodes, I want to make it very clear that if you look at the path identities, that there are a lot of new nodes in War. Like, these are nodes we're familiar with, and if you're a player pushing these higher tiered wars, you would have already seen them in static content. But some of these nodes, like Stung Once, Twice Shy, or what's a good one? Chitness Thorns, which I believe is every time you crit them, you take Thorns damage. I believe, I could be completely wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. Running on Fumes, we see Spry, I think actually was in War before, but there are like other new nodes like Matador and Trial by Fire and Rage that are entering War that weren't there before, so that's something to be mindful of. I'll talk about that after I go over the new nodes, but going over the new nodes, timestamp here for those of you who are interested. Well, actually, probably like 30 seconds prior, because I want that disclaimer there for this part. So these new nodes are essentially set up into pairs, except for the last two. So Strike Counter, Fury, and Combat Power Rate have the same mechanic, where the attacker starts with 3 light charges, 3 medium charges, and 2 heavy charges, and when a charge is removed every time you do one of those types of attacks, and when any of the charges hits 0, the attacker the defender either receives a fury, or if it's combat power rate, then the attacker's power rate decreases over time until all the charges are reset, and you reset the charges with specials. Now, I actually think this one's not too bad. I think strike counter fury has the potential to be bad, depending on what kind of defenders they place there, because any kind of damage enhancement could be really problematic, especially if you're using someone like Ebony Maw on defense or something, where there's like fun and interactive damage. So I think that one could potentially be bad. But as far as like counter ideas, I think Power Star 1 buffs are going to be really good here. I think Power Gain champions in general are going to be really good here. Mild changes to your playstyle. Essentially, you can do a heavy and then do medium, light, medium, and all of them will trigger at the same time, and then throw a special 1, and then you'll get all your charges back again. And you should be able to do 2 rotations of that before you really have to worry about the fury or the combat power rate. I do want to comment though, if this is like Aegis Heavy with the heavy charges, multi-hit heavies might actually work against your advantage. So you might like do a heavy attack, and if it's a 3-hit heavy, that might consume all the charges. I don't know if that's how they've got it set up, like maybe it's all 1 heavy charge. I'm just stating that, you know, Aegis Heavy was a multi-hit heavy, where like a 3-hit heavy attack did trigger 3 charges. So be mindful of that. That could potentially screw you here. Not so much the strike counter fury, but at least for the strike counter combat power rate, if you're using a champion who's just completely non-special reliant for damage, like you know you're not going to need to throw specials to get your damage output there, you can bring anyone. I think that one is like the most friendly, so that has a lot of potential overall. I'm actually pretty okay with those 2 nodes. The next 2 are Steady Buildup Fury and Steady Buildup Unblockable. So the defender has 100% increased defensive ability accuracy, and additionally, whenever the attacker has 3 or more debuffs, the defender either gains a fury or gains unblockable permanently until the attacker hits 0 debuffs. Additionally, whenever the attacker purifies a debuff, they gain a fury or they gain unblockable, depending on which one you're on for 10 and 7 seconds respectively. So you do get, you know, bonused for purifying those debuffs. As far as countering this, I think Ghost, Elsa, Quake, Captain America, Infinity War with that synergy where he shrugs debuffs, I think these are all going to be really good potentially options here. As for the unblockable one, I think just standard intercepting should work fairly well. There's going to be a fairly limited set of champions who like fit the niche defense here, because like not a lot of champions passively place debuffs, but in the cases where those do pop up, because inevitably they will, I do think Elsa probably is like the one that stands out the most for champions who's going to be really good here. But overall, I think steady build up. The unblockable might be a little tricky, but overall, I think these 2 nodes are also pretty reasonable, especially when you consider the steady build up unblockable is replacing the unblockable timed node we currently have. So overall, I'm actually really okay with that. It's like a nice, you know, still have that mechanic in war, but not as bad. Ebb and Flow Knockdown and Ebb and Flow Intercept. These ones are rough. So the defender has protection, which is reduces all damage by 90% until they are either knocked down or intercepted based on the node. And once you remove the protection, you get a Fury or a Precision passive for 6 seconds. While you have this passive buff, you get just passive, not passive buff. While you have this passive, the protection is removed, and after you lose the passive, all debuffs on the defender are purified and their protection returns. 6 seconds is not a long time. So yeah, this is rough. This is really rough. But as far as like counter ideas, I think there are some really good options here still. I think you can use any special 3 champion is going to be really good here. So essentially you'll ramp up to a special 3. I think Havoc has a lot of potential here. Essentially you'll just intercept, throw a special 3, and because you're not really burdened by the timer there, you'll get all of your damage from the special 3, and it might be a couple special 3s before the fight is over, but that's a really good method. I think it also comes down to whether or not you can stack this. On whether or not like certain champions, like the heavy mechanic, like if you can do the Ebb and Flow knockdown and every time you knock them down you reset the timer, then any heavy centric champion can do that. As far as Ebb and Flow intercept, not as many options, but same concept. I think using like a special 3 champion or Doom or Namor, the champions who can kind of like really capitalize on a 6-second window. Even like Domino special 3 hits super hard, Ghost with unblockable specials, Cap Infinity War or Corvus Glaive. I think these are all really good potential options for here. It just really depends on the defender placement because that's going to have a huge impact. And then after that, I just got to say, like, I think they need to buff this in favor of the attackers. 6 seconds is really short of a window, like really short, and they're not giving you enough here to really justify it. Like a 40% increase in attack rating, you know, that's nice. I just don't think it's enough. I'd rather see 30% attack rating or 20% attack rating and 9 or 12 seconds here. Same with the critical rating. Like increasing your chance to crit really doesn't help here. I'd rather see cruelty rating here. And then same thing for a longer duration. I'd rather get more damage out rather than have a higher chance to crit, because odds are you're already bringing high burst champions into this fight in the beginning. I think Captain Marvel movie ramped up could be really good here as well for both of these. Yeah, so yeah, it's just tricky. This is definitely probably the worst node I feel like they've added, but once we get a sense on the defenders, I'm sure the community as a whole will tackle the answers here. I do think there are a lot of potential answers like Thing. Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but I do think if we tackle it together, there are answers, and as opposed to Aegis Intercept, Aegis Heavy, I think these two are arguably not as bad. You know, because at least you're getting rewarded here, and as long as you can capitalize in those 6 seconds, it's better. But if you can't capitalize in those 6 seconds, it's definitely worse. It's going to come down to defender placement there, as well as defense tactics. Next up, we have buff imbalance. So whenever the defender gains a buff, the attacker receives an indefinite power drain or indefinite weakness debuff. These weaknesses or power drains are removed whenever the attacker lands a special attack. So here, I really like this nodes. So for the power drain one, as long as you're using a champion who isn't reliant on power gain or using specials, it's a free fight, you know? Might be long, might be lengthy, but that's a free fight. The buff imbalance weakness one, any general power gain champion can do this, but also like even regular champions can do this. You got to think about like the rate at which specific champions gain buffs, and you know, you do gain power. Even like simple power boosts or power 1-star boosts can really help here. In addition to just like the standard power gain champions, I think there's a lot of potential here. So overall, I don't think these two nodes are bad. Even just like a power lock champion, even on buff and balance weakness, could be really good. Like magic, cycling through with magic, you can just spam an insane amount of specials, and you might have an initial period of time where you're not getting a lot of damage off because of the weaknesses. But once you hit your special 2 rotation, it's a free fight. So overall, I think buff and balance is going to be really good as long as you're bringing the right champions there. Next up, we have window of opportunity stun. So the defender starts the fight stun immune. Whenever they would be stunned, the attacker is stunned instead for 4 seconds. This immunity lasts for 12 seconds, then goes on cooldown for 12 seconds before returning. When the immunity returns, it purifies all stun debuffs on the defender. This one looks a little bit rough as well. Essentially, you're going to want to get really good at intercepting. Ghost is going to be good here. Quake is going to be good here. As long as you kind of time Quake stun around the stun immunity, you can totally Quake this fight. It's not going to be ideal. You know what? You might not even be able to quake this fight. I apologize. I'm going to stick with the Ghost and intercepting here. I'm sure someone out there can probably quake this fight, but I'm going to remove that as an option I'm suggesting here, just because, you know, in hindsight, that's actually not really great. But yeah, I think Ghost, standard intercepting. I think Hyperion is going to be really good here with his special intercepts. I think if you're cheeky and you want to meme around with like Black Panther Civil War or Mordo, you know, and like wars where the damage isn't as crazy, those are good options here as well. So yeah, not a ton of options, but definitely some options there. But there's nothing wrong with an intercept node, so just stick someone on your team in your alliance who's good at intercepting here, and you should be fine, no problem. And then finally, hazard shift, incinerate / poison. So striking the defender has a 40% chance to inflict an incinerate debuff for the first 7 seconds, and then the second 7 seconds it's swapped for poison, and I'm assuming this alternates. And this sounds bad at first because it's literally just like Biohazard, but it's Biohazard with Incinerate Poison instead of Bleed Poison. But I actually think it's not that bad. Ghost and Red Hawk can totally wreck this. Any champion who, you know, like Quake can totally do this fight, Corvus Glaive can totally do this node, and additionally any Incinerate or any Poison immune champion can do this. You'll just only have a 7-second damage window. So as long as you play around that 7-second damage window, it's not that bad. Yes, it's not the ideal option, but it is something you can do and get around this node overall. You'll just be parrying a lot. 7 seconds really isn't that long. That's like 3, maybe 4 parries, plus a little dancing for specials. So yeah, that's all the new nodes, my first impressions, and kind of like how I would counter it. As far as like the nodes they're adding to war, like the new ones we haven't really seen, like Vigorous Assault, you know, that's gonna be rough. That's essentially adding another form of either deny regen or another form of intercepting and get good at intercepting. So that's rough. Masochism we're familiar with. Vigor's not bad, and Indomitable's not that bad. We see Power Struggle, Power Focus 1, Power Drain. Those are all fine. The Stun 1 twice shy looks a little rough. I'm not a huge fan of putting Power Stings into war, but that overall looks like a fairly reasonable Namor path. You'll just be throwing special 1s, I think, with Namor, and then you'll actually benefit from the Power Sting, or maybe like... yeah, not a ton of options there. I'm not super psyched about that. Stun 1 twice shy. You're going to really need to blast through that fight without throwing specials. And then we got like Heavy-Handed, Chitinous Thorns. Always hate Chitinous Thorns, but you know, it is what it is. Explosive Personality in war, it won't be too bad overall. I think this is like a really reasonable path as well. And then we got like Running on Fumes. This is like the another power management node. We have Steady Buildup, Unblockable with Crumbling Armor. So that's incredibly important to think about because you are going to be having like less armor, so taking a lot more punishment if you take a combo to the face. I don't mind that Steady Build Up Fury is stacked with Long Distance Relationship. I think that's pretty reasonable. You're gonna have to blast that fight down anyways. Ebb and Flow is being matched up with Power Drain, Heavy Hitter, Rapid Metabolism, and Tenacity, and that's the part I'm not super psyched about. It's gonna be pretty rough. I definitely think Path 5 is going to be probably the hardest path in Alliance War now. So not a fan. We have Aggression Fury still here. Aggression Prowess, I think, is new. I don't think we've seen that before. And Unlimited Power. I don't know what Unlimited Power is. So yeah, overall, these not too bad, I think, as far as nodes are considered. Aggression Fury can always have like potential for completely wrecking you, but as long as you're bringing like good champions in here for high damage output, that shouldn't be bad, or consistent power control, that shouldn't be bad. We do see Kinetic Transference. We have Matador, and then we're going to have Kinetic Transference with Aspect of Evolution. So Path 7 also looks like a pretty rough power control path. I'm not a huge fan of having a power control path with a Matador node there as well, but at least Matador can be done with technically any champion. You're just going to have to get used to the playstyle. Heal block, nothing crazy here on Path 8 outside of the buff imbalance nodes. And then Path 9, we have the shifting immunities plus window of opportunity. Do note that there's empowered immunity here as well. So just got to get really, really good at handling those. But pretty much anyone you bring to handle shifting hazard should probably be able to handle window of opportunity because of the playstyle mechanic there. So that's pretty reasonable. And then we have changes to boss nodes as well. So node 19 is going to be Furies. Yeah, I'm not going to go over this. This is too much, but just keep in mind that if you're looking at the boss nodes, these have changed as well. Like Tunnel Vision is being added. Matador is going to be on one of them. So make sure you check these out as well. Make sure you identify counters. Rage is going to be one, so that's going to be a Mystic-centered fight. As well, or Quake fight if you'd rather Quake it. So yeah, be mindful. I'm not super upset with this setup on nodes. I think that overall we come out ahead on these new nodes and interactions. So I'd say from a player perspective, I think this is a positive direction, but I'm not super psyched without getting any more information than this. Yeah, and personally, I think These hidden nodes, not a fan. Those are probably like one of the worst interactions in Alliance War. But you know, it is what it is. If you're into Alliance War and Alliance War is what you like and you enjoy it, you know, it's more of the same. Nothing crazy. I'd say some overall positive changes, some rough new paths, but what's new? We had rough new paths previously. And if you hate Alliance War, well, you probably hated this entire video anyways. So that said, as always, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.